let's get started with procurement. So procurement in CACFP. So you are receiving federal funds, and because you are receiving federal funds, you have to procure using federal procurement requirements. So all purchasing transactions must conduct in a manner providing full and open competition. So everybody has to have what we call a procurement plan. We have a prototype that you can use. We have one for small centers that's in the manual. It's also in a Word document that you can print out in the resource library under the procurement section. We also have one if you are a large facility that you can print out as well. These meet all of USDA requirements. Now, I would say if you print this out, don't change. I mean, you can add stuff to it, but don't mark anything out because it does meet requirements. And if you did say you mark something out because you're like, I will never do this, and then you end up doing it, it would be a finding on the review. So just leave it as is. You can always add stuff to it. Just don't take anything away from the procurement plan, but that does have to be on file when we come out to do a review. These are just some of the things that have to be in that procurement plan. And like I mentioned, the one that we have, they do meet all the requirements. So if you use our prototype, you do not have to make any changes. Like the only time you have to make changes if you do something differently, or sometimes USDA does change maybe the methods of procurement, or they change the thresholds. But if you're still under that threshold, don't feel like you need to change your procurement plan as long as you're doing what you say you're doing in that plan. We're mostly going to be talking about the informal methods. We will briefly talk about formal. We do a procurement training once every 3 or so months, and it mostly talks about the formal. We do go through the entire process. It's about a 1.5 hour training, so you can also go to that. It is available also in OSDE Connect. And if you have any additional questions, you can always reach out to our office about procurement. So what micro purchasing is, I'm really just kind of going to explain it to you because most of our centers tend to do micro purchasing. A lot of times people look at the dollar amount and be like, oh, that's what I'm doing, but it's not the case. So everybody should be doing under the $50,000 per transaction. But really what micro purchasing is it's when you're buying all of your CACFP stuff from multiple sources, but you don't check prices. So let's just say you buy your milk from Brahms, you buy your food from Sam's and from Costco and from Walmart. And you maybe buy paper from Staples, you buy goods, you buy certain things like pots and pans or holders and stuff like that from Amazon. You're just buying all of your CACFP stuff from multiple vendors. That is what micro purchasing is. Again, the price must be reasonable and you're not required to check prices. But a lot of you do check prices. And when you do check prices, you're actually doing small purchase procedures. So you can do anything informal when you're spending under the $250,000 per bid or per vendor or per solicitation. So this is when you do check prices. It can be by email, by phone, in person, by catalogs. You're just checking prices. So if you're using, say, a vendor like Cisco, Benny Keith, you should be sending your specifications or your grocery list to those vendors. And then only one has to send it back to you. But you can yourself go check prices. We've had some people that they only do grocery pickup. So they only do it from Walmart. If you're only using one source for everything, that is not micro purchasing. So what we suggest is you just verify, just check prices, and you can do it once a year. We do have a form that you can use called checking prices at local stores. It is in the procurement section that might help with that. But if you're really only using 1 or 2 vendors, then you do need to check prices and just tell us. And even if you don't even have to go with the person that's the lowest in price, you just have to tell us why you're going with that vendor. So it's just make sure either most of you are going to be doing small purchase, and a lot of you are going to be doing micro purchasing. And this again is just the differences between the micro purchasing and small purchase. So again, one, you just make sure you're buying, which I think most of our centers tend to, especially when you're in a metro area, you can buy from multiple people. Maybe you're in a rural county and you can only buy from Walmart, then you do need to check prices. Again, you only have to do it once a year. If you're using a vendor, you should be checking prices as well. Now, formal procurement is anything that you spend that's over the $250,000 per bid or per solicitation. You do have to send specifications to at least 2 people, or again, we call it kind of your grocery list. If you do this, you have to have an advertisement in the paper. Now, a lot of times you're a large entity. If you're doing this with formal procurement, we actually don't even have a lot of schools that do this. So you may be with an organization or with the government or some other entity where you probably have somebody that's all they do is procurement for your organization. There are 2 types of formal procurement. There is what we call invitation for bid or sealed bid, or we have an RFP. RFP, where price alone. So with sealed bid, you have to go with the lowest price no matter what. But most people do an RFP because they are buying it not just for the price. Like, for instance, if you're using Walmart because you can do grocery pickup, it's kind of the same thing. Like, price is an important factor of it, but maybe it's because they can deliver it when they need to, or maybe you have centers, like 10 centers all over the state, and this one vendor can get to all of your centers. So that is what most people, they will do a request for proposal. Next, we have contracting for other services and food service. So if you do, say, win a contract for services, the institution does retain final administrative and financial responsibility. You cannot contract for critical management functions. There are certain things that you can definitely that you can have for services that you can contract out. What you have to do is, if you win a contract for certain services, you create a contract. You write it, send it to us, and we have to approve it before you can go out and bid. Because we may just tell you, no, you can't contract that service out, or maybe we have to just let you know some wording or something that needs to be in there. But if you do that, once it is approved, we do have to have a copy of the contract, and we have to have a new one every year, or every year that you have a contract. So maybe you have a 1-year contract with up to 4 renewals. We'll just need the renewal. Maybe it's a 5-year contract. Anytime you change the contract, we need to have a new one. Now, we also have a contract for food service. So many of you may actually get food from, say, a school district or from a vendor. So what it is every day that they're bringing you food. So say today for lunch, it's spaghetti with green beans, peaches, a roll, and milk. And every day they're bringing that to you hot, and you're just serving it out. That's what we talk about contracting for food service. You are required to use our contract. We have 2, an agreement to furnish food. We're going to split it up. It's going to be one's for school and one's for other entity. And then that is if it's the contract for the year is under $250,000. If it is over that, then it is an RFP. And we are working on one because we have some people that they do an RFP, but it's not that food's delivered to them every day. It's they are buying food. So we're working on creating an RFP for that. Now, if you do contract for food service, what happens is if you contract with the school district, they keep production records. So if there are any issues with the documentation that they gave you, we can go to the school and look at their information, because the school is responsible as they're the ones preparing the food. So if you don't use a school or use a vendor, every day they're bringing you a meal. And in those meals, they have what's called a contract meal delivery receipt. You keep those receipts. Those are your menu as served form. Because what it does is, and I'm going to show you an example, it shows you what they delivered and how much you have to serve it out. Now, at the end of the month, the school or the vendor is going to bill you for those meals, whatever the rate is that they stated. And then when you pay the vendor or the school district, and then you turn around and get reimbursement from us. So that's kind of how the process works. Now, when we talked about earlier, you cannot claim meals more than what in participation. What sometimes happens is this has happened to a center that I had. You can only claim meals that were used, that were fed to a child. It's not, again, it's based on the point of service, not, and in this case, attendance kind of helps. But so an example is maybe your license for 25, and you have a contract. In this case, it was with the school district. And every morning, because you have 25 enrolled, every morning they bring you 25 breakfasts. But then they say, hey, by 9 o'clock, call us and let us know how many kids you have, and then we'll send over that many meals. So for breakfast, since they always send over 25 breakfasts, they're always going to charge you for 25 breakfasts. But you can only claim 18 because that's how many kids actually received a meal. It can only be by kids that actually received a meal, not by just the number of meals that were given to you. So just make sure of that, because you can't claim more kids that are in attendance. So if you serve 25 meals and you only had 18 in attendance, you can't do that. This is an example of the contract meal delivery receipt. This needs to come every day completely filled out. If it is not completely filled out, you have a problem, and you can let them know in the contract that it states that if this is not filled out, or if they don't give you the right food items, that you don't have to pay them. It's in the contract. So this has to be filled out correctly, because it has to show that you received a reimbursable meal, and it has to let you know how to serve it out. How do you serve it? Now, if you do contract with the school, they are required to charge you a certain amount. It's a USDA requirement, and a school gets in trouble with us if they do not do this. But if you contract with a vendor, we don't regulate that. If you do contract with the school, we do ask that we do have a contract in July. Now, the new rates don't come out until July. So once those are available, that's when you should get your contract with the school. And then we have to have a copy of that contract every year. Any contract that you have for anything CACFP, we have to have a contract every year or any time that there is a change in the contract.